Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever walked past an old stone church or maybe a quiet rolling cemetery and you just saw bricks, mortar, and grass? Well, today we're going to look right past those physical materials. We're going to see how these spaces are actually living vessels. They hold the shared memories, the struggles, and the triumphs of the exact people who built them. So we'll be exploring the fascinating histories of 4 very distinct North American sites, really trying to understand exactly how physical spaces anchor a community's heritage.
To do this, we are taking a bit of a road trip across the continent. Here is our agenda. First, preserving historic sacred spaces. Second, architectural splendor in Philadelphia. Third, historic grounds in Newfoundland. Fourth, a tale of 2 churches. Fifth, building a modern parish. And finally, number 6, the people behind the places. Let's get moving.
Section 1. Preserving historic sacred spaces, the living records of our communities. We are going to start by looking at the overarching theme of how our built environment captures history.
But before we jump to our first location, I actually want you to consider your own neighborhood for a second. Ask yourself, how do its physical structures act as living records of the people who came before us? It's kind of like a giant puzzle. Just keep that in mind as we look at how other communities have documented their own pasts.
Moving on to Section 2, Architectural Splendor in Philadelphia, featuring the Immaculate Conception Church. Our first stop takes us to Pennsylvania to examine the intricate architectural footprint of an 1870 church.
Let's look closely at the actual aerial boundary lines of the Immaculate Conception Church and Rectory in Philadelphia's Northern Liberties neighborhood. You can see how the blue shading maps out the exact parcels, specifically 1032 and 1018 to 20 North Front Street. Notice how historical nominations literally map out a community's physical footprint, tightly sandwiched right next to the Market Street elevated train line. This overhead perspective is incredible because it shows us exactly how sacred historic spaces survive even as modern infrastructure literally builds up right against their walls.
And well, here's the flip side of historic preservation, the bureaucratic reality. To protect these monuments, you absolutely need the literal paperwork. Take this 2018 to 2019 Philadelphia Register of Historic Places nomination form, which was submitted by the Keeping Society of Philadelphia. Preservation isn't just standing around admiring old buildings, right? It's a rigorous dance of checking boxes, filling out forms in triplicate, and formally proving a building's cultural and architectural value to a city.
So what exactly were they fighting to protect with all that paperwork? The stunning 1870 to 1871 design by master ecclesiastical architect Edwin Forrest Durang. He designed this structure in a really beautiful Lombard Romanesque style with Gothic Revival overtones. It features a patterned slate-gabled roof, a gorgeous red brick exterior set upon a solid brownstone base, and intricate pressed metal details. The whole design really reflects an era characterized by distinctive, enduring craftsmanship.
Section 3. Historic Grounds in Newfoundland, the St. Thomas of Villanova Cemetery. Let's move way up north to Conception Bay South, Newfoundland, to find a very different kind of historical anchor.
Tracking its long journey, this sprawling coastal cemetery serves as a physical timeline of the area's development. Get this, it dates its earliest known headstone all the way back to 1848. It originally surrounded St. Edward's Chapel, but as the Catholic community grew, a new church was built nearby, and the old cemetery was actually renamed to reflect its association with the new parish. Over a century and a half later, in 2009, this continually used space was formally recognized as a municipal heritage site.
The site's character is heavily defined by its natural environment. It sits on a gentle slope, offering just this unimpeded panoramic ocean view of Conception Bay and Belle Island. But honestly, more importantly, the surviving 19th century memorial stones serve as a literal genealogical record of early Irish immigration patterns to the area. Some stones even mark the resting places of part-time parishioners who vacation there in the summer but actually resided in St. John's. It is a perfect example of how a landscape can tell a fascinating demographic story.
All right, Section 4, A Tale of 2 Churches, St. Thomas of Villanova in Massachusetts. Next, let's head down to Wilmington, Massachusetts to explore how modern expansion physically shifted a local parish.
The crucial point we are looking at here is the contrast between 2 physical spaces over time. The Catholic parish in Wilmington was officially founded in 1919, eventually occupying a chapel on Middlesex Avenue. But as the town and the congregation grew, eventually boasting around 2,000 members, they really needed a change. So, around 1960, they erected a brand new building at 126 Middlesex Avenue. The original chapel was eventually torn down in 1968 to make room for the new Wilmington Memorial Library. This just highlights how historic preservation doesn't always mean a building stays forever. Sometimes a community's growth requires adaptation and a shifting physical footprint.
Section 5. Building a modern parish, the grassroots founding in Illinois. Our final stop takes us to the Midwest in the 1960s, specifically Palatine, Illinois. The sheer scale of this financial leap is just staggering. When founding pastor Father John Wall was assigned to start the parish in 1961, he had no buildings, no parishioners, literally just 12.5 acres of empty land. Early Sunday collections were pretty discouraging, $135 a week. But look at what happens next. By April 1962, the men of the parish organized a fund drive, and in a single afternoon, 100 men went door to door and secured an unbelievable $210,000 in pledges. I mean, that completely altered the trajectory of the parish. This rapid post-war boom is perfectly mapped out through their timeline. In 1961, they were squeezing Sunday masses in around Presbyterian services at the local Winston School gym. But thanks to that massive fundraising effort, they broke ground for a new school in 1962. Tragically, Father Wall passed away from cancer that very same year. It was a massive emotional blow, but his successor, Father Francis Waldron, pushed the vision forward. By 1969, just 8 years after having literally nothing but empty land, they held the formal dedication of a brand new, permanent church building. You can truly feel the emotional weight of them finally having a physical home. Back in 1963, before the permanent church was even finished, they held their first masses in an area of the new school building that would eventually serve as 6 classrooms. But for that moment, the sanctuary was wood-paneled and carpeted, with a marble backdrop behind the altar. Taking it all in, Father Francis Waldron perfectly captured this grassroots triumph by declaring, "Now we're a real parish."
As the buildings were finished, the focus shifted entirely to the people inside them. Embracing the sweeping changes of Vatican II, the newly formed parish council enshrined their community spirit in this 1970 mission statement. It emphasized nourishing faith, witnessing love, and joyfully sharing human gifts. They relied heavily on the laity, the everyday people of the community, to run the parish, acting as lectors, extraordinary ministers, and council members. It proved for sure that the true structure holding the church up wasn't the steel or the wood, it was the congregation itself.
Finally, Section 6. The people behind the places, a shared legacy. What you should take away from this explainer is that whether we are looking at grand, preserved 19th century architecture in Philadelphia, a rolling coastal cemetery in Newfoundland, or 1960s suburban expansion in Massachusetts and Illinois, the true foundation is absolutely always the people. So I want to leave you with this final thought to explore in your own community. Look closely at your local historic sites, whether it's a grand 1870 church, a quiet graveyard, or even a 1960s suburban school gym that once hosted Sunday Mass. What stories do they tell? And more importantly, what legacies are they leaving behind for the next generation to uncover? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep exploring the history right in your own backyard.